Good morning, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington. It is Monday, the 4th of January, 2021. The month is already marching along day by day, as it does pretty soon. It will be Groundhog Day, and then it'll be March, and the year will fly by, and we will one day look back on it and go, yeah, that was doable, even though we are still in the middle of our hunkering down. We have a drive-by event to go to, waving out of cars at people rather than sitting out in the yards or in the living room and enjoying one another's company for various events, anniversaries, birthdays. We have an anniversary coming up next week ourselves, and we're not going out to dinner. So I don't know, we should at least do takeout, make it special. Yeah. Anyway, I started looking at the book of Leviticus on Saturday, and today really want to get into the book. Sometimes when I start studying a book, it leads down a rabbit hole though, and then I have to end up doing research. So today my research is about wood. And completely unrelated, I ran across this very curious story. A year ago for Christmas, Pope Francis finally authorized a piece of the original manger of Jesus to travel from a church, Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Jerusalem, and from there then to Bethlehem, to the Grotto of the Nativity. Francis, according to Vatican scholars, said that the whole manger itself, made of wood and stone, cannot be moved. It's way too fragile. It's 2,000 years old after all. But a small piece, a just inches long fragment of wood from the manger, was then allowed to be given permanently back to the birthplace of Jesus. Leads us to ask several questions. The birthplace of Jesus is legendary, but it's their best guess. There was no inscription saying Jesus was here. It's a cave, not a stable, which would be making sense in that area. Secondly, they didn't have a lot of wood to build things with, so I'm curious, if they can take wood, they can also then carbon date that wood, and they can do analysis on that wood. That was not allowed. Why? Well, it brings us to the third reason. Is it really the original manger of Jesus? It dates back to the 7th century, so somewhere between 601 and 700, somebody came up with something. And there's two ways to look at this practice. One is to say, in order to be an important church, we need a relic. And there's no finer relic than the manger in which Jesus, if only it would come on market, the original manger in which Jesus the infant was laid. And then there's the other side of it. P.T. Barnum said a sucker is born every minute. If the original manger of Jesus is sought after, wouldn't there be a way to make the original manger of Jesus? Martin Luther in the 16th century said on his pilgrimage to Rome that he found enough of the original cross on which Jesus was crucified to rebuild the entire city of Rome itself, which of course is impossible. Luther, 500 years ago, debunked this idea that relics really existed, that they were authentic, and thirdly, that they were important. At the same time, the overseer of the Grotto of the Nativity had tears of joy, saying that this original, seeable, visible piece of the history of Jesus' birth is now back where it belongs, in Jesus' true birthplace. If we need pieces of what may or may not be a 2,000-year-old manger, in what may or may not be a cave where Jesus was born, if we need that to strengthen our faith, then I would ask what is our faith really based on? Are we more into superstition? Are we more into the God who abides in us, in our hearts, and that we know this through faith, not through relics? And the fact is, as humans, we use our minds, we use our emotions, and we can be manipulated. Objects, sounds, smells, sights, these can all help our faith, or they can make us dependent on that emotional response to faith, which is not faith itself. But here's this wood. Let's get back to the wood. Where did the wood come from? In the book of Leviticus, chapter 1, there is this detailed explanation of the burnt offerings. And this offering is ongoing, which is what led me to do the research into wood. In order for them to be able to offer the spring bull that is born, that first bull has to be given to God. The rest of them can be part of your herd, but that first little boy calf, has to then be taken to the priests at the altar, which has to be constantly burning because of the amount of sacrifice. Hundreds of thousands of people offering sacrifice. My goodness, in the spring, the stench of burnt animal flesh must have just been overwhelming. So they had to take this, the priests, the sons of Aaron, had to then inspect this animal, make sure it had no blemishes, no eczema, no scabs, no injuries, no sprains, no broken legs, no spots or stripes. It had to be a single color on the coat, whether it was a calf or a goat or a sheep. And depending on who you were and what you raised, that's what you would offer. Bird offerings, it tells how you'll kill the bird, tells how you collect the blood of animals and what you do with the blood before then putting the carcass to be burned on the altar. So the altar really is just a giant barbecue burning all the time. The wood then, according to some scholars, came either from the priests. Remember, the priests are the holy tribe. They're the ones doing the offerings, telling people, okay, you've sinned, that's 2 turtle doves and a partridge in a pear tree or whatever, or half a bull for your family and half a bull for the other family. So between you, offer a whole bull, and then you'll be forgiven and you'll be okay with God, and you'll be closer to holy or less unholy than you were before the offering. So they would inspect it, but some say that these priests also in their downtime were responsible for collecting wood and growing wood and nurturing wood. So it would have been important to the priests wherever they settled in the land to make sure that they had a supply of wood. Now we think of the Holy Land as arid, as a semi-desert land, but there is water, there are wadis, there are rivers, and during these, or near these, there was growing things. For instance, we have biblical references to myrtle and to olive. And these are not large trees, but they're trees with good hard wood. You can buy artifacts made from Holy Land olive wood or myrtle wood. The fig tree, Jesus refers to the fig tree in some of his parables. Figs, they may have had date palms, other things like that. Certainly we know that they cultivated grapes, but there may have been wild grapes too, and it takes a long time for a grapevine to mature. But when you do cut some of those vines, that old hard wood would burn very well. So they're constantly scouring for wood. And we think of Jesus as Father Joseph being a carpenter. Well, more likely he was a stonemason, to suggest that there were people whose occupation was shaping wood full-time is probably not accurate, considering that the most basic building material is rock. Now they would use wood for certain pieces, such as the roof beams, so the wood would be scarce because they're busy using up every scrap of wood they can to keep that altar burning all the time. And that's the book of Leviticus, about the offering that you must then take and burn. Chapter 2 is grain offering. If 1 is animals, 2 is grain offering. And it tells how you will make loaves of different kinds of flour, and you will take these, and you will take this, and sometimes in chapter 2 it even says with frankincense mixed in, and then it's put onto the fire. And then you give a portion of the flour to the priests as their offering. That's how the priests eat. They're allowed to eat the bread of presence after a week. They're allowed to eat parts of the offerings. That's what they get. Their diet, it sounds like, is mostly animal, a lot of red animal meat, and grain, carbohydrates. So they worked hard, but did they have cholesterol? You gotta wonder, because I don't see a lot of vegetables being offered. There's no celery offering. There's no offering of vegetables that I can see. So that's Leviticus, the first 2 chapters, the offerings of the animals and the offerings of the grains and the breads, all consumed by the fire on that very precious supply of wood in a place that doesn't have woods as such.